How are you, man? I'm Gil Roth, and you're listening to a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories Show podcast. This is a COVID check-in episode where I record with a past guest of the Virtual Memories Show to find out how they're holding up during the pandemic. As far as how I'm doing, I'm all right. Yesterday, Amy and I drove out to my optometrist to pick up a 6-month supply of contact lenses and get curbside pickup from Greek City, this restaurant I used to frequent when I worked in an office near there in the way before time. Getting ready to head out, I put on jeans and a shirt and then realized I haven't worn anything but sweatpants and running shorts since maybe the second week of March. There's literally been no occasion to get dressed for anything else. All I do is run and walk when we go out of the house. Turns out even that was unnecessary because Amy volunteered for the extravehicular activity at both stops. So I just stayed in the car the whole time. But it was nice having somewhere to go. And the food was awfully good. I gave them a big tip. They know who we are, so I think they were kind of happy to hear from an old timer like that. And today, I got an email from one of the trade shows for my day job that postponed from this spring. It was about reserving hotel space for the rescheduled event, which is to be held in mid-July in New York City at the Javits Center. Now, I think I've mentioned this on the show a few weeks ago, how we had a show that was, in fact, it was supposed to be next week at the Javits and, of course, is pushed off. But even mid-July, man, I can't imagine it's going to happen. So I'm holding off on booking a hotel for that one. Worst comes to worst, if they do hold it and the world is in perfect shape by then, I can always just drive in, you know? I mean, I've been wrong about plenty of stuff, but I just feel like this is still going to be a long-term deal. That said, I have no idea how long I can keep up with the daily schedule for the podcast, but for now, let's get to today's guest and a huge caveat that I have to give. Cartoonist Sylvia Nickerson is the guest this time around. She's checking in from Hamilton, Ontario. Sylvia's debut graphic novel from Drawn and Quarterly, Creation, was nominated for a Doug Wright Award for Emerging Talent earlier this year, and the presentation for the award was going to be in mid-May at the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, which is canceled. They'll still hold the Doug Wrights at some point online, but, you know, Sylvia and I talk about that during the show. When it gets announced, I will be sure to make a comment here in the intro. I also hope that Nina Bunjevac, who is up for the Best Book Award for Bezamena, comes through too. Creation, Sylvia's book, is about motherhood and the arts and the invisible people in a post-industrial city, namely Hamilton, Ontario. So I was really looking forward to getting Sylvia's perspective on life during the pandemic. Now, as caveats go, this one is a big one. My audio track got screwed up. There was static and distortion on it that I didn't pick up on my end. And when Sylvia said, "Gee, you sound kind of scratchy," I thought she meant, well, recording in the late afternoon and your allergies are getting to you and you sound kind of scratchy. It turns out I sounded like I was completely, like I was in witness protection with my voice being like incredibly staticked over and digitally modulated. Sounded awful. I could not get rid of the effect. So basically, I played back both tracks. I transcribed my questions and re-recorded them here. So what you're going to hear is not 100% of the conversation. All of Sylvia's stuff is there. My stuff was just recorded today as a attempt at catching the tone I had. And yes, I took out some of the blathering and dithering that I usually make during these, well, as I'm doing right now. So it's a bit more direct than I normally sound in these things. I apologize. I apologize to Sylvia. I should have said, when you say scratchy, do you mean, which is what I'll be doing with future podcasts. Anyway, here's me and Sylvia. So how are you dealing?
Well, part of the reason why I thought it would be nice to have a conversation with someone like yourself, who's like, I've met you, but you're not immediately involved in my life, is partly because, through talking to other people, you kind of understand more about yourself, because I don't know, these days I'm kind of trying to figure out how I'm dealing. I mean, I live in Hamilton, Ontario. I have two kids who are 6 and 10. My partner works in healthcare. I guess we've been self-isolating for about a month in Ontario. I'm trying to think what day it was we were sent home from work, but it was late March. It was before my birthday, which is March 24th. So so it's going on a month. And, I would say every day, the reaction to the thing is kind of past, and now you're just sort of in it, like a month in, because sort of like the reaction at first is like, oh, you want to learn everything you possibly can about the situation and think about it all the time. And now I'm just like, oh. So I guess that's why I said to you on email this morning, I just feel a little blank, because it's kind of like, I appreciated listening to some of these check-ins you've been having with other cartoonists. And I listened to some podcasts that the Center for Cartoon Studies had posted with some other artists that they had recorded with since the changes. And I felt that was really nice to listen to. And in the first couple of weeks, I took the opportunity to I was actually working quite a bit on creative stuff and then kind of petered out a little bit, but I'm hoping I get the focus back to get creating again in the next couple of weeks.
What do you think accounted for that drop off in creative work?
I think partly it's just maybe just helping my kids adapt to the situation. And now we have to kind of keep them doing school. And I think, at first, maybe I was still hopeful that the restrictions would lift more quickly. I had a show opening up at the Art Gallery of Hamilton where I was going to be artist in residence for a year. I'd planned to write a new book, and I was making some sculptures to put in the gallery, and that was supposed to open April 22nd, I think. It was like maybe even this Saturday it was supposed to open. So I was in the process of putting all of that together. So I kept going with that, but now I'm not sure exactly when that installation will take place. Like it could be a couple of months from now. So, and I think also it's also just an opportunity to hit pause on creating and then think about whether what you were doing makes sense now, because everybody's in just a different headspace. So, maybe it makes sense to hit pause and then think about what you can do now that's going to connect with people with where they're at right now. I'm curious about what you've learned talking to people as you have been doing every day.
Well, I learned that as neurotic as I am, at least I didn't pursue a life in the arts. But let me ask, so much of your debut book, Creation, is about the invisible people of Hamilton. What becomes of those invisible people in this sort of situation? Are you able to look in on that, or are you too focused on your family right now to be able to really look out at the world? Well,
we can't completely avoid it. We live in an urban neighborhood, and there's a homeless population in Hamilton in our urban neighborhood. I think that, as many people have probably read, I think people in that population are nervous about accessing the shelter system because of the close quarters that people have to sleep in the shelter system. So there are more tents, around town. And I think people trying to, literally, maybe avoid the shelter system if they can help it. I can't imagine really what it would be like to be part of that community. Even just accessing a bathroom right now would be probably pretty difficult. But I know there are a lot of people working to raise extra money and put extra shelters in place for people who are in a homeless situation during this time. I know the city of Hamilton's been doing some planning, like opening extra facilities. But I'm not exactly an expert on where that's at right now.
I just wasn't sure how well you're able to balance those broader concerns with the immediate ones of your family.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it is in mind because, yeah, I definitely feel pretty lucky that we have at least a really nice place to shelter in place, you know? So it's pretty great. It's pretty great from that point of view.
When you talk about putting a pause on the project you were working on, have you made any insights into where your work might go and how it'll reflect the moment we're going through?
Well, I took this artist in residency opportunity. I figured I was just going to be, you know, like a cartoonist writer now and write another book. But the irony is that, you know, I felt like, okay, there's like this 1,500 square foot space and I have to be in it for a year. So I should create some like physical work to take up the space. So I've done that. And now, you know, there's no in-person physical, you know, galleries gonna open, right? So I don't know. I feel like maybe it's the opportunity to pivot back to creating something that's more of a narrative that you can do online in your Instagram or Instagram stories or something like that. It's very easily accessible for people wherever they are. And I was going to be a part of their educational programs, like working with kids in different adult or teenage groups, helping them, you know, create their own stories or build paper mache sculptures, characters to come in this installation. So yeah, I'm just trying to think about whether that could be something I could offer through, you know, like a virtual seminar where you get a little package of, you know, the materials that I'd prepared. And instead of doing it all together in a class, you know, you could package it out. People could do it at home and you could lead it like a session over Zoom or something. And, you know, for adults, I still think it is a great time for people who have time at home to think about like creating other worlds or going into other worlds. Like obviously, right, it's come up a lot, you know, it's a great time for reading and to lose yourself in fiction or the arts, basically, when you don't want to think about your own world. But that also works for creating your own world or to nurture your own creative talent, right? So I was thinking about how I could maybe lead a seminar, almost like a writing workshop, but for comics, or if it's like life writing or comics memoir based on your own life writing, and getting people to do some exercises that could lead them into more opening up their own creative possibility, you know, for using the time that they have to do that kind of deeper, like creative work. I think it could be a really nice thing, and also a way to connect with people still, while we're all looking for that right now. So
do you see yourself as the Linda Barry of Hamilton, Ontario, or is that way too high a goal to reach?
Oh, well, she's so great. Yeah, I mean, if I could get there, that would really be an amazing accomplishment, right? I saw her speak in Toronto in the fall, and I think maybe it was through Drawn and Quarterly. I watched a little video or something, or it was at the talk. They showed a little video of her giving seminars at her university and getting these like science master students to open up and start trying to like tell their stories of their research through cartooning. It was fantastic. So I think it's great. I would emulate that for sure.
We should all hope to have even a fraction of the ability she has and bringing that out in people. Now, you mentioned diving into other worlds. Have you been spending much time in novels or TV or movies or other cultural objects you weren't checking out before the shelter in place happened?
Yeah, I've been binging TV, but I've actually been thinking a lot about, I'm always thinking about narrative. And I mean, in my comic book that I wrote, you know, I mean, I don't know, like I guess I'd say, you know, the book that I wrote, Creation, is a little bit about, you know, smashing apart any idealistic views of motherhood or, you know, say the urban fabric, or idealistic, you know, finding your dreams in the urban space that I might have had. So it's not a story that's going to appeal to everyone. And I suppose in these times I've been watching more like, escapist television or whatever, where everything works out really nice. And, or over the winter, I went back and watched a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I hadn't really participated in the last 10 years at all. So I thought, I should check out what's going on with that in the movies. So I watched a lot of those. And you think about like, what about some of these things in popular culture is so appealing? I mean, that there's a lot of things in a lot of popular television and movies, which is, I don't really think is true, but it may be what we want to believe to be true, So it's like, it's not. I don't think that there's a lot of things in the world that are really very good or just, or like there's a lot of injustice and not goodness. But I think that sometimes we can turn to the arts for those kinds of things, like to exist in a world where the best possible things happen. So I guess what I'm saying is I hadn't really written about that or created that before, but I've been thinking about the new book that I'd like to write and whether I want to tend towards writing something that's going to, destroy idealism or build it up. So, I actually think I'm not sentimental in some ways, but I can see that there's definitely a value in creating worlds where, you want to live there because it's in some ways maybe better than the one you're in,
Are you more bummed out by your residency being put on hiatus or by Toronto Comic Arts Festival getting canceled for this year, since you're up for a Doug Wright Award and they were going to be given out at TCAF?
Oh, well.
Which is also my way of saying congrats on getting nominated.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Well, that was one of the small good things that has happened in the past month that meant a lot to me. Was getting nominated. Obviously the cancellation of that is one of many cancellations that's like hard, for artists at this time. I mean, I was going to give some, like I said, like writing workshops, educational workshops, the residency. TCAF is always a highlight of the year. I was going to participate in this other comics festival called Ting Fest, which happens in London, Ontario, which is sort of a celebration of Southwestern Ontario comics artists, of which there are many. And, all of that.
I was about to make a comment.
Well, I was also just about to refer to the fact that, Southwestern Ontario, right? We have famous writers like Alice Munro and something called, Southern Ontario Gothic. And after I read that, I thought, oh yes, I guess that's exactly what I've written. Instead of a sort of urban Ontario Gothic, I wrote a sort of, or instead of a rural Ontario Gothic, I wrote a kind of like dark urban Ontario Gothic. So I seem to fall right in line with what many other writers have done from my area. But yeah, there's a lot of talent around this part of Canada in the comics world. But yeah, all of that's canceled now. So I don't know. I mean, anyway, there are comics artists that have had books coming out right now who have had like online launches and are trying to, carry on like the Beguiling books in Toronto has been delivering books. And there's a lot of ways in which people in my network that I follow on social media in the book world are still trying to kind of provide that community and connection. And I think that's really hopeful. And I'm really encouraged by that. And I think the Doug Wright Awards are going to have an online ceremony, and they're always very creative and extremely humorous in what they do at this ceremony. So, I mean, this could only be a hilarious turn of events that they'll exploit to its full humorous potential, I'm sure. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it'll be really funny. I don't know, like Seth will have to dress up, and they have these like custom Doug Wright like suit jackets they wear, right? So I'm sure like they will have to wear that on the Zoom call or whatever gets set up for that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that gets adapted. Yeah.
Have you learned anything about parenting from this month plus of being cooped up with the kids?
Yeah, parenting, it's a hard job because you have to be, when you're a good parent, you're more selfless. And I think, I'm an artist, so I'm, sort of a self-involved, narcissistic person, right? So,
I wasn't going to say anything, but...
Yeah, you weren't going to say anything, but, let's be honest. No, I mean, on one level, it's been great. I've seen a lot more of my kids. I feel a lot of empathy towards them, though, because their own worlds have been narrowed a tremendous amount, and for this kind of abstract reason that they're trying to figure out, and they've been amazingly kind of able to adapt to it, but I guess it's a little bit like us. I just kind of watch how their world's been changed, and kind of amazed at just that every day we got to get up now and keep on going under these new circumstances, and with a lot of uncertainty about when certain things they look forward to would be able to happen again. So I guess it's just I reflect on that through watching them, and I mean, I think somebody, or there's a podcast out there, which I think I've listened to a few times, called The Longest Shortest Time, which is kind of like how people describe parenting, which is like that some of the moments can feel like forever, but it's changing all the time, and your role in their life is changing all the time. So I suppose you just try to be in the present as much as you can. It makes you kind of zen that way. You have to try to be very mindful of just who you can be for them right now. And that this too shall pass, like other things. So the bad and the good. So yeah, it's been an interesting time to be a family, because we're now just, obviously we are a nuclear family kind of, but now we're super nuclear because, you cut away all these other people who you interact with on your day to day, and you're just with your main people. So, I don't know, we're getting along reasonably well. So that's good. It's good.
Until they start conspiring with each other against you.
Oh, you mean like just this morning? Yeah.
Once they start plotting, you're really in trouble. Until then, hope to see your next book and see you again at a TCAF or SPX.
Yeah, ditto. And thanks for keeping up with your podcast. I'll keep listening to it and to your COVID check-ins. I'm looking forward to catching up with all the other ones you've done. They're a nice way to keep up with the comics community while this interesting period of disconnection is taking place. So I think that's a really nice positive thing that you're doing. So I think that's just what I have in mind, is kind of how we can all do something like that, just to keep our morale up.
Thanks for coming on, Sylvia.
Yeah, thank you, Gil. It was nice to talk to you today.
And that was Sylvia Nickerson. Go check out her Doug Wright-nominated graphic novel, Creation, from Drawn and Quarterly. You can find that in better bookstores, at Drawn and Quarterly's site, and at Sylvia's site, which is sylvianickerson.ca, because Canada. It is SylviaNickerson.ca. She's also on Twitter as Sylvia Nickerson. You could check her work out there, too. And we'll be back tomorrow with another COVID check-in. If you want to send me a little update to read on the air, or have something you want to share with the listeners, let me know and we'll set something up. I'm at groth18@gmail.com. You can find my contact info at our websites, vmspod.com and chimeraobscura.com/VM. And you can find a link to the COVID-19 sessions at both sites, with links to all of these daily episodes. And in case you're interested in the remote setup that I did not use perfectly this time around. It is Zencastr.com that allows me to record remotely with guests. And that's spelled Zencastr, so no final E. Zencastr Pro level is $20 a month, but my Patreon supporters more than cover that because, well, they're very giving, and I'm not spending money anymore on in-person episodes or even buying much by way of books. And I don't have to spend money on parking and tolls and hotel rooms at SPX and TCAF and places like that, and coffee. So if you can spare anything, find the Patreons and GoFundMes, Kickstarters, Indiegogos, tip jars, whatever the crowdfunding model is for the artists and writers you like. Show them some support. If you'd rather donate to a charity, go ahead and do that. Go find the local food bank, find other charities that are helping take care of people in need. I'm Gil Roth. It is April 24th, 2020, and this was a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories show. Thanks so much for listening. Keep the conversation going, stay safe, and wash your damn hands.